Hello and welcome to IBTimes TV. I'm Leanna Brinded, Business Editor for the International Business Times. Joining me now is Robin Young. He's the CEO of Amur Minerals. So hi, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Leanna. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. It's kind of an exciting topic. Usually when we look at commodity markets, we look at, or energy markets, we look at oil, we look at gas, we look at gold. But nickel, copper factors into our everyday lives, but we don't probably know it. Could you explain a bit more how that is?
Nickel and copper are the building blocks of our society. Nickel is a primary element which 65% of its use goes into making stainless steel stainless and construction materials such as I-beams for bridges and for buildings. Copper itself is a malleable metal which allows us to conduct electricity and produce wiring. So it's one of our primary basic building blocks of our industry. It generally comes from two sources. One is a lateritic source and the other is a sulfide source. Sulfide sources are the origin of all copper and nickel minerals, and over time Mother Nature has for millions of years weathered away the sulfide, and you end up with two products, a laterite and a nickel and a sulfide itself. It's the sulfides that are important to us as a company in particular. The primary use, as I had said, is for construction, and it's in everybody's interest on an everyday basis.
Sure. And so at the moment, in terms of the markets, can you tell us how maybe the pricing of maybe nickel and copper is at the moment, and how that presents an opportunity for investors or investment into projects?
The nickel price today is running approximately $14,000 a ton, with the price of copper also running at about $7,000 a ton. These two commodities have been in a downward pressure movement at this point in time, and a lot of it goes back to 2008 when the market started to implode and we went into financial crises in Europe and in North America. The depressed pricing is actually to our advantage as a company. Because of the depressed price and the reduction in capacity, it gives us the opportunity to what I would call a catch-up scenario, where as we are an exploration company and we are readying and moving our way towards production, what we will be doing is doing engineering study work that allows us to advance while the rest of the companies sit in a dormant cycle. As a result of this, it allows the company to have an advantage to catch up with other companies and produce a nickel sulfide project. The nickel sulfide projects are lower in cost than operating costs and in capital costs. As a result, this gives us an opportunity to advance our project on a far swifter basis and to move into a market and replace other production that has been left out of the market.
Sure. Maybe let's talk more about the project itself for more, because you've tapped into quite a wealth of resources. Maybe we can talk about what region and what you hope in terms of the production that will be there.
Yes, what we have done is we have been able to identify a large geological structure that sits in the Russian Far East. And it's in the Siberian region. It's in permafrost, where typical winter temperatures reach minus 40 degrees and as much as 40 degrees positive during the summer. This project area is part of a large trend. And inside this trend, we identified approximately 10 years ago that there was a nickel anomaly area from which we could go out and continue doing additional drilling and exploration. And over that 10-year period, we have been able to identify the proximity of about 530,000 tons of nickel and 150,000 tons of copper. Based on today's metal pricing, what we are looking at is an in situ value in the ground of approximately $8 billion. So as we've been advancing the project and exploring, we have not yet defined any of the limits. So we anticipate that in the future, the project itself will increase in size. We've been doing a lot of engineering work that will be used to advance our cash flow models and our economic analyses on the projects itself. And this includes the development of technology where we will extract the nickel and the copper and potentially move that product into the Chinese and the Asian markets. As for the Asian markets, 75% of the world's nickel is consumed by the countries of China, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. So we're sitting very close to a very solid market, and we're looking forward to the ability to develop and place this project into production in the near future.
Well, there's some great opportunity there which you're really tapping into. But naturally, can you tell me a bit about the challenges that the company may face or that you've looked ahead of the curve at to tackle?
One of the challenges, of course, is working in an international environment. Russia offers its separate challenges, and there is also a cultural and a language difference. So it does complicate the process because translations are often needed. There are also a different set of rules and regulations within which you must work. One of the typical examples is the application and successful acquiring of a mining license. Because we are a nickel project and we are in the Russian Far East, we're considered to be a strategic asset. As being a strategic asset, that means we have to go through a separate licensing structure and approval system than most companies do. Any company, including Russian companies that are considered to be strategic, have to go through the same sets and procedures that we do at this point in time. We have been systematically working with the national government in Moscow and advancing through the various agencies who provide input back to the master organization, which is Rosnedra, and Ros standing for Russia, Nedra for minerals. So over time, as they progress through the mining codes and start approving us on an incremental step-by-step basis, we will be meeting challenges. These challenges will be to provide all the appropriate documentation, which they already have, but questions do come up during the process. One of the other challenges that we have is we are a remote project located in the Russian Far East. The nearest rail contact that we have is approximately 270 kilometers to the west of us. And this railroad does link into the Chinese rail system where our potential market is. It also transits to the west where it will actually tie into the Mongolian rail system itself. So we do have transportation problems since we are approximately 250 kilometers away from the nearest infrastructure. So that would require us to also build in a power option, which would include the consideration for the construction of a 320 kilometer long power line, or alternatively building our own power plants on site, which would include the purchase of about 40 megawatts of power. So there are a lot of options and challenges that present themselves to the company. These are challenges that the company is up to because when you sit there and work with the Russians, they have an experience of having worked in remote regions for a great deal of time. So we do have the strong background and personal experience of our board of directors as well.
Great. And I mean, looking into the future, what's interesting is that there's a lot of companies out there, especially now, trying to expand and do several projects at one time. Why does Amur Minerals concentrate solely on this one project?
We feel that we must remain focused on this project. Within the zone itself, we have 5 deposits. So we're not calling this really a deposit anymore. It's a district. Districts are what create major mining companies. Over time, with the present 500,000 tons of nickel that we have defined, we believe that some of these deposits will link up and the numbers will become much larger. At that point in time, it will allow us to build a far larger project, and we will need to do detailed and focused engineering. This takes a great deal of work. We recognize what we are. We're a small, successful exploration company, and we will stay focused in the interest of the shareholders and not diversify our assets and become lost in the potential of having another project which would detract us from doing our jobs.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And that was Robin Young. He's the CEO of Amur Minerals.